This week I learned, the first week back at work is the literal worst. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update, and what a week it has been. We're going to get into all those reasons why, a little more on the books, but a little lesser on the channel this week. But all weeks just kind of come and go, and some are good, some are bad, some are just, you'd rather forget about it. But let's just go ahead and talk about, like usual, guys, what am I reading? I did finish Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Now, this was very, very good. I want to get that up front. This is very, very good. If you like a good coming-of-age story, as I do, I don't think you'll have any problems with this at all. Definitely exceeded my expectations in one regard. I said a lot how I didn't understand reading the synopsis for this, why people were recommending this to me. Now I can see it. It definitely goes through Demon's whole life here. And it really, through his coming of age, obviously, and his hardships. And he has a lot of hardships. And in fact, you can count on one hand how many victories this kid seems to have. With this, it's not that I didn't like this. I did. I feel like I've read better coming of age stories, and again, I've read lots of them, and I don't think that any of them really are bad. I like a lot of them. With this, it's just with the acclaim and the recommendations I have, I was expecting something truly special. Now, I want to say again, not that this book had to be special to be good or anything like that. I think I was just expecting a little bit more by how much people just carry on about it, both critically and just viewers just recommending it to me all the time. I did like it a lot. I had a good time with it. As good a time as you can have with, obviously awful stuff. But with me, it just, I don't know, there was just something about it where I was just like, I kept waiting for like that big moment to be like, oh wow, this is really, really turning it into something just unbelievable. And it never really had that. So for me, it seems like very much like if you've read like A Boy's Life or something like that, yeah, you're going to feel like, oh, this is kind of not as good as that. But again, I don't feel like it has to be that good as something else that has set the bar. So I think I probably went into it with expectations a little bit too high, but I did really, really enjoy the book. It's in consideration for my book of the month. So when I tell people it wasn't special, that doesn't mean it wasn't really, really good. Now again, that's me just having a bad way of saying how a book makes me feel, and it obviously I could think about it and say, yeah, that sounds a little bit negative, Mike. I definitely don't think so, because I had one of my patrons, Mark, was like, oh, well, now I know not to read it, and of course, other patrons and myself are like, no, that's not the case at all. I definitely think it's definitely worth reading. Again, for me, it's just like if I'm comparing it to some of the titans and coming of age that I've read, no, it doesn't compare to that. And I think it's really unfair to ask it to do that. But again, a very, very good book. Very, very awful stuff. But very, very sobering. There's a opioid crisis, Oxycontin crisis, things like that. It touches on a lot of the things that other coming-of-age stories I haven't done, because they've either been in a fantasy setting or they've been many, many years ago. This one taking place, somewhat recently, is dealing with a lot of those problems that we actually have in real life. And I think that's something that does need to be addressed and thought about. And it presents those in a very, very tasteful way, and a way that you can, like I say, I hate to use the word sobering since there's drug addiction in this book. For me, it's just like it will kind of wake you up to some things that are actually happening, and these are problems I think need to be addressed. And it's okay to talk about them. I do think, because I'm usually like, hey, don't talk about real life in any of these books. Obviously, you're dealing with something like this. You're going to talk about real life a little bit. It doesn't angle into, hey, this is the way you should feel about things. That's the kind of real life discussions in books I don't really care for. But this is just presenting, hey, here's this problem, and yeah, it's real, and here's how some characters would deal with that problem. And that's the way I think that all these issues should be tackled. I also finished Sunrise on the Reaping. This is the second prequel Hunger Games book, but the first one that I have read. The first Hunger Games book I have read since Mockingjay many, many years ago let me down a little bit. In hindsight, Mockingjay is pretty good. I'll kind of get into it with why Sunrise for the Reaping may have let me down a touch as well. And the reason is for so many years I said, if she's going to write a prequel book, Suzanne Collins needs to write a book about Haymitch, about how he won the games. This is kind of like all those years where we were like, man, I wish George Lucas would tell us a story about Boba Fett or about Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. And then when you got it, you're kind of like, kind of wasn't what I was expecting, or kind of how I was hoping it would go. With this is what I didn't really care about Mockingjay was the first two Hunger Games books. I really liked the games. I liked how she wrote that competitive nature in the arena. It was really, really good. How do you survive, with the odds ever stacked against you? And I always thought, hey, that's the way that the third book goes. And the third book was very much, just the rebellion. And look, for me, the rebellion plot line in Hunger Games was always secondary for me. Cool, it needs to happen, and obviously that's why we're here, is the uprising. But I loved the game so much, and I love the way that she wrote those, and it just always kept me guessing on how our heroes were going to live, And with this, I thought, okay, well, this is years and years and years before that. This is the second Court of Quail. This is 24 years before the first Hunger Games book. We'll see ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤 go in here and how he actually broke through and won the games. The first winner from District 12 ever. And this is just another rebellion book, guys. This is another one of those, well, we're planting the seeds for the rebellion. And again, I think there's room for that. But what I didn't like is this is a Court of Quail, which means you got 2 contestants from each district. So there was 48 contestants instead of 24, like a usual Hunger Games. And so ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤 goes in there with these ideas from these people, I'm not going to tell you who, they have him setting up basically some espionage to try to break the games, like you're seeing them still do in the Hunger Games trilogy. And with this book, it's like, okay, so you're going in there with this mission. Cool, that's fine. I have no problems with that. There's still, 47 other kids that are trying to kill you. And what just kind of broke it for me was he goes in the arena, and I think 2 times he runs into other people. So it's the whole time he's trying to do this, like this espionage stuff. It's like, where is everybody? How are you just finding yourself so easily secluded? So it really never felt like any sense of urgency for as far as staying alive. It was more a sense of urgency of I had to do these things to set up this espionage that we had planned. And that really, really bummed me out because I was really hoping to see ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤 do some stuff, that'd be like, oh man, this guy back in his day was just an animal, And I don't know. I think going into it with the wrong expectations. But for me, it's just like, for the Hunger Games, it was like the games was the primary thing. And the rebellion plot was very, very secondary for me. And that's why in hindsight, I like Mockingjay better. But when it came out, I was like, whatever, this is a letdown. But with this one, it's like, it's not a bad book at all. It's just very much more Mockingjay than it is Catching Fire or Hunger Games. And if that's what you're looking for, cool. For me, I really wanted to see the competitive nature of the arena again, and you do not get it. You get a couple of shocking scenes, I guess you'd say. You can see why ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤 is so messed up in the original story. I think the epilogue was, it was so much pandering fan service. And again, you go to a prequel, you expect things like that. I just didn't feel like she had to do that. But it's my guess on paper before this month was this would be my book of the month, and it's not. I'll go ahead and tell you, it's not my book of the month. And it's one of those where it's like, look, it's a good book. It's worth reading, especially if you're a Hunger Games fan. You will enjoy it, getting to know more about this character, get to know more about Katniss's parents and things like that. Get to know more about Plutarch Heavensbee and Beatty and some of these characters that you liked from the original trilogy. You get to see them again, and that's always a lot of fun. But this doesn't crack into that original trilogy. If you're ranking them, you're never going to rank this one above any of those first 3 books. And I think that just kind of is the problem when you go into a prequel series. If she writes anything else in this universe, I either hope it's after the events of Mockingjay, or maybe we can just go into like a whole new, like a Red Rising thing, skip a decade and see what happens after that. Or I'd like to see them either write a story about Finnick or Annie. I think that would be interesting because that's always a character. I felt like she short shrifted us on those characters in the original trilogy. But I could talk about that in the original trilogy if I ever... I don't know, maybe I should review the original trilogy. Maybe I should reread the original trilogy, I guess. I don't know. See, that's one of those things where I just talked about rereads, and I don't know if that would be a good thing to reread The Hunger Games or not. But as far as Sunrise of the Reaping goes, I expected just a touch more. It was a bit let down. But if you go into it not expecting what I expected, I think you might enjoy it quite a bit. It wasn't anything miserable. I just hoped it went a different way. So what am I going to read, guys? I did go ahead and start The Grey Bastards. This is book 1, The Lotlands by Jonathan French. Not that far into it. All I'm going to say about this up front, guys, is this is not going to be a book for everyone. This is... It's kind of ridiculous, put it that way. And I mean that not in a bad way. I'm just saying that, like, if you're one of those people who doesn't like Jay Kristoff because he cusses a lot, you're not going to like this. It's very over the top with the language. It's absurd. It basically has toilet humor, dick jokes, over the top, like just teenage boy kind of just joking about sexual things. It's not going to be for everyone. I think the bad language is really, really challenging Jay Kristoff right now for how much he can put in a paragraph. But I like the idea so far. Very much Sons of Anarchy set amongst the Spanish Inquisition. It's kind of how it feels like, but your characters are half orcs instead of bikers. You know, for me, it's like saying, oh, it's got these over-the-top things. You know, I mean, you're talking about half orcs riding hogs. You know, it's fantasy, so I'm going to be fine with it being a little bit over-the-top and eccentric, I think. But, yeah, this is one that I can see a lot of people, because, like I just said, I was reading it, and I had half the people saying, oh, it's great, especially if you've read Sons of Anarchy, and the other half been like, this is not literature because of the way he writes, blah, 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 you know, but this was a Smith-Bo darling, you know, for many, many years, and then it got picked up and by a major publisher, and that's the way it went the rest of the way. But so this is an indie guy that kind of made his own way and got published, so I've had this on my list for years, so I'm very excited to finally do it. But my first thoughts on it are that, yeah, this is going to have a lot of people that will be like, not for me. But I like bad language. I tell people all the time, I've got Irish blood. I'm married to a redhead. Bad language don't bother me at all. In fact, sometimes I'm like, give me more of it. Just be ridiculous with it. And he's definitely being a bit ridiculous with it. But we'll talk about it more next week as I get further into it. I haven't really learned a lot yet, except that he really, really likes Sons of Anarchy. I mean, the main character's name is Jackal instead of Jax. His best friend is Oates instead of Ope. You know, there's a table they all sit at with a gavel and they vote. You know, it's very much, you could see he loved him some Sons of Anarchy, but you know what? I love me some Sons of Anarchy, so that's okay by me. I like letting your influences hang on your sleeve as long as you don't just get to the point where like, yeah, this is exactly like season 4 of that show, you know? We'll talk about that more once I get a little further into it. And then all I've got left for what month is this? June. All I've got left for June, guys, is Unholy by Neal Shusterman. So I'll try to finish those two up before the calendar does roll around to July. Let's talk about this week on the channel, guys. It was very, very sparse. The return to work has been awful. So I took, 7 days off work. 7 working days, not in the office. So it was very, very crazy when I got back. And it was just a mile a minute every day. So by the time I got home, I was like, I'm not going up there and recording anything. So it was very, very tough for me. So I only got one video out. I think it's the first time in like 4 years I only got one video out of this channel because I was just so wiped out. And I did a good and a bad. I was talking about rereads. And it's one of those where, like, when I presented the idea, a lot of my patrons were like, I was like, hey, I have a good idea for a video. And they were like, that's kind of dumb in a polite way. They were saying, like, there's nothing wrong with, there's no bad things about rereads. So I was like, geez, is this just like a me thing? And so I saw people debating this on Twitter about why rereads are good or why rereads are bad. This is a good idea for me to do on a video. And when I talk about it is, you know, there is no right answer, and the good or the bad isn't really me telling you if it is good or bad. It's talking about the good things about it and the bad things about it. That's really what the crux of a good and the bad video is. And with this is like, look, I understand why people reread a lot of stuff. Me, personally, the bad side of it is like, I got all this stuff I got to read. I mean, like I just said, I talked about how I put this off for years because I would do stuff like reread Stephen King. I was rereading Red Rising. You know, I was rereading Song of Ice and Fire again. You know, it's one of those where you just have to balance. Hey, we're never going to be able to read everything we want before we go. You know, do we really want to waste time rereading stuff you've read a dozen times? Like I said, in some cases I get it, and I want you to do what works for your life. But I do think there are several things about it that can, you know, set you back a little bit because series take a long time. You know, they take a lot of time. But I said, hey, if you finish, reading Wheel of Time, you want to go right back to Eye of the World, start over again. Cool. I understand. Go for it. That's what does it for you. That's what makes you happy. I want you to be happy. Again, as long as you're reading. That's really the key for me here. I don't care what you're reading as long as you're reading. But for me, it's like, how are you ever going to discover new things that you love? That's like saying, I love this one movie, and I'm just going to watch it over and over again. I don't want to waste my time on these movies that might be mid. You might be taking away something that's going to be like huge for your life because you don't want to give it a chance because you just rather reread or rewatch the same thing over and over again. So for me, it's like, do what makes you happy. If comfort food is what you want, I understand that, especially if you're in a slump right now. But, you know, hey, try to discover some new worlds, because I think, you might find some things you didn't know that you were looking for. I did it, in case you missed it, for Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. That was just a clip from last week's weekly update. But I like to get those out there in case people are looking for just a review of that book. Grace of Kings, really, really great book. Really, really frustrating also, and I talk about it in that. I'm headed to Comicpalooza, like immediately after I finish recording this. I'm meeting Christopher Rocchio down there. He's the only author I know personally that's there. This is a convention that's in Houston, and I've never been. I have media access. This is the first time I'm going to a convention, really, since I started doing this. I went to E3 back when they did the gaming expo, way back in the early 2000s when I worked at a game store. So this will be interesting for me. I don't know exactly what to expect. I don't hear a lot of people talk about Comicpalooza, but it's local, so I figure, hey, why not apply for media? And I got access. But I'll be meeting Christopher down there and just kind of walk around and see what I can figure out. So I don't know if I'm going to have any coverage for it here on the channel, because I don't really know anything about it. I'm really going in flying by the seat of my pants. But that's what I'll be doing later on today. So worst comes to worst, I'll at least take a minute to have Christopher come on the channel and say something, even if it's just like a short or something like that. We'll goof off, do something, because that's what we do. We goof off. Next week, plans, guys, I will try to get back on the ball here as things have slowed down a bit at work. Not really slowed down, I've just caught up a little bit. I'll be doing my reading plans for July. I'm still nailing it down. I share my plans as I'm working through my TBR with my patrons and kind of get feedback from them about what they think. Is that something you'd be interested in hearing me talk about? And I've had some people be like, oh yeah, I really like that book, to other people being like, I haven't heard of any of these books you've talked about for months. So I think that's the danger sometimes of trying to mix it up a little bit, trying not to just always do fancy. And I kind of also point out, I might be running out some of the greatest hits. And I know that now. I'm kind of running out of some of the big, heavy series that people always like to talk about. And, that's going to happen eventually. You're in year 6 of this channel. You're going to start to run out of some of these series. But, again, I like to try to find some new series and give some authors a try that I've been putting off for a long time. That's kind of the whole point of looking ahead to a TBR, making sure I mix and balance a little bit. But it's still very, very much up for debate. I'm not really sure what that final tap's going to be. And it might come down right to the minute before I start recording of which 5 or 6 books I will pick for the month of July. I know I talked about I was going to do my video about when it is okay to abandon a series. I never really was able to put together, and that good and the bad one it just inspired me at the moment, so that's why I went ahead and recorded that. But I'll try to get that abandoning a series, and hey, it's okay to do it. And when is it okay to do it? No matter how popular a series is, it's okay to do it. I'll try to get that out sometime this week. TV and movie talk. Only things that really did this week, I watched the Pee Wee Herman documentary on HBO. Very, very good. I don't know how old some of you guys are, but for me, we grew up and Pee Wee Herman was like huge. This guy was massive. He was like, I don't know, he was like Taylor Swift. He wasn't musical, so I guess he had some music bits. Anyway, Pee Wee's Playhouse was huge. And it's one of those things you go back and you look at and you're like, how did you guys like this? But we did, man. We never missed it. Something about he had a magnetic aura. He was just crazy. He was a spaz, and he just made us laugh. And I think I've watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure countless times. I could probably put that movie on mute and recite the whole thing for you, including the soundtrack. It's just that good. But we still use so many things. I know you are, but what am I? There's so many things about Pee Wee Herman that were just like, you look back, like, I don't know how this was so big, but it was. There's no denying it was massive. And this documentary is very, very good. It was recorded obviously before he passed away, and they kind of finished bits of it after he passed away. But it's very revealing. It doesn't shy away from the controversies, obviously, that we probably all know about. And it's one of those things. It's a snapshot of something that was just so incredibly massive at that time, and getting the story about that. It just seemed like some of the people that he came up with in acting class. Katie Seagal, she was Peggy Bundy on Married with Children. David Hasselhoff, obviously. Phil Hartman. There's a lot of these people who came up with Elvira. They were all like in the same acting class, and I had no idea about these things. So it was really cool getting that story, and what a character. And Pee-wee's Playhouse, yeah, it showing some of those clips, it just unlocked some memories up here. I didn't remember, like Penny, the claymation girl with the penny eyes. I had not thought about that in decades, and it just like, holy crap, what a wave of nostalgia watching that documentary. So very good. If you, I mean, even if you weren't around when Pee Wee Herman was a big thing, you just want to know more about how that happened. I always tell you, I can watch a documentary on just about anything, but I think you'd be entertained by this just if you want to know how was this such a phenomenon in the 80s. Very good, very entertaining. And like I said, Paul Reubens definitely lets you peep into his soul a little bit in that documentary. And it's really bittersweet, since it's being released posthumously, for him. So very good, very good. I think you'd like it a bit. If you were alive in the 80s and you were a fan, I think you'll love it. If you didn't experience it and you want to kind of know why, I think it would really fill in those blanks for you. We did a rewatch of something last night because it was the 50th birthday of Steven Spielberg's Jaws. I don't know if you know that, 50 years old. And so obviously we want to go ahead and give it the old rewatch. This is, I mean, spitballing here, it might be the 100th time I've watched this movie. This movie when I was a kid, I mean, I don't even know this. Boys, when they're younger, man, it is all about dinosaurs and sharks. And obviously when I found Jaws as a kid, that blew me away. And that's why I think just makes Jaws special, is it resonates with every generation. It's 50 years old. It still looks amazing. It still sounds amazing. John Williams, oh my God. And you think Steven Spielberg was 27 when he made this movie? Oh, hear about all the production problems they had. This movie never should have turned out as good as it did. Obviously having the problems with Bruce the Shark actually made the movie better because they showed the shark maybe a total of like 3 minutes in this movie. But what you don't see is what builds that tension. And what an incredible movie, man. It just, again, incredibly acted, incredibly shot. There's the cinematography is just wonderful. And to be that old and still be that watchable. And like I said, that's why I feel like it's just so timeless. And that's why it resonates with every generation. My kids love it. My youngest, he jumped several times, but he was all in for it. He's really going on. My youngest is going on a real big horror streak right now. And he's been asking lots of questions about Jaws. Obviously, because I said, boys love sharks. He grew up loving the Baby Shark song, so he's always been a big shark fan. But it feels like watching Jaws is kind of like a rite of passage for a young man. At least I do think so. But it works for everything, boys, girls. It doesn't matter. It's an incredible movie. My wife, like the one thing that's always like made our marriage be like, I don't know, is because she said she thought Jaws was boring, and I was always like, that is one of the best movies ever made. Way I put it is, there's a shortage of perfect movies in the world, and Jaws is one of them. And I stand by that, even on this dozens and dozens of rewatches of this movie. It still just continues to be absolutely amazing and capture people's imagination and capture new generations. And that's not easy to do because there are some of those great movies, even great Spielberg movies, that seem like they're starting to be lost to time. But Jaws does not seem to be one of them. And my wife stayed awake through the whole movie last night. I'm so proud of her. So that was kind of our week, guys. I don't know really what I'm going to do to try to get back on track here. It just kind of depends on how this convention goes today. So I'm going to head to that, and I'll kind of report back after that. And we'll talk about all those things as well as the stuff I have planned for next week. But I'd love to know what you guys are up to. What do you watch? What do you read? What are you listening to? What are you playing? Are you going to rewatch Jaws? Are you watching Jaws for the first time? I would love to hear about that experience. So drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you're up to, and I will talk to you there.